My guest today is a former teammate and fellow baseball alum who's now a nonprofit executive, Bryan Williams. Bryan, thanks for joining us on today's episode.
Happy to be here. Honored. Thanks for asking me. Happy to come on and tell some stories and hopefully embarrass you a little bit.
Excellent. Well, before we get into what you're doing today, I thought we'd kind of, take a stroll down memory lane. I know you were originally from the Orlando area, so
Correct.
Maybe just talk a little bit about, the decision to come to JU and why you chose the university.
Yeah, that's a great question. Very, very interesting process is, going through that decision making, going through the recruiting process and talking to coaches in universities. And I came from Orlando. My high school had more students than JU did at that time. And so when I was looking for that university experience and the other opportunities that I had in front of me were all major institutions. University of Miami was talking at that time, FAU, all very large. And when I got to JU and got to meet some of the guys and see the facilities were top notch at that time, still are. And just the welcoming nature of that, both small school experience, but also being in a large city at the same time. So the ability to connect with the student body, meet people, real laid back, but then, going to the beach, going downtown, you had the Jaguars there. So there are a lot of things that were beneficial from a large city standpoint, but also that comfort level of coming into an environment that more is like a family. More is, welcoming, is not as intimidating as a 30, 40, 50, 60,000 student body. That's really the experience I wanted. I wanted to be able to connect with that student body. So that was really something when I sat down and looked at all the factors of why do I want to choose Jacksonville University. I wanted that small school experience.
Awesome. And what years were you there overall, just for the listeners?
Yeah, so I was there from 99 to 2002. So when did you get there in 01? Is that when you started?
I was there 01, and Scott and I were talking beforehand. We were looking up some of the stats from our team that year, specifically the staff we had. And I was telling him it was a pretty seasoned team at that point. We only had 3 freshmen. And I remember, coming in and being the youngest guy on the staff to have that senior leadership or more senior leadership. You were one of the guys that you weren't really a vocal leader, but you were one of the guys that people followed because you did the right things and you had this tenacity and this focus when you were on the mound. And I was thinking through some of the games that kind of stood out in my mind. You mentioned FAU, and I know we had a pretty bitter rivalry with those guys. And I remember you had a win that extended a season for us down in Miami when you went out and basically took it for the team and just kept going out inning after inning to save the rest of the arm. So just things that I was remembering about you. And so if you have any, memories, whether it was the 01 team where, we had that regional bid or anything else, maybe just a story or two about your playing time.
Well, thank you for the kind words, Pat. I appreciate that. It's always nice to come on and have someone compliment you. So thanks for writing that for me. Yeah, it's funny is we did have a really experienced team those last couple of years I was there, just because the staff, the coaching staff at that time was looking to bring in transfers along with new players. So definitely it's not a vocal type of leader, and that kind of translates to my career too, and more of that if you do the right thing and people will see that. So take that with you. The things that that we learn on the field that translate directly into your professional from work ethic, discipline, really are things that I learned at JU. And my senior year was really a fun ride. Had that time where I had the lowest ERA in the country at one point and had a string of 20 or 30 straight shutout innings. So that was a really neat experience. And when you asked me to come on, I started thinking about some of the baseball stories and the baseball memories. Those were neat to kind of think about, but it was really a lot of that off the field experience and camaraderie and making these lifetime friends. I'm still on text chains with guys from that team. I still keep in touch with you. There are a lot of players that, I'm out here in Southern Oregon, so of course don't get to see as much as I'd like, but still stay in contact with, because it became your family, became, your support system, the people that you could lean on. So have a lot of great baseball stories, especially on the road. I don't know, were you there when the bus went off the road and everybody flew off of their bunks and it was this like crazy middle of the night experience? That was one of those experiences you're like, I'm glad I'm still here to talk about it, but man, that was kind of nutty. Arriving at game time at FSU after that football player unfortunately passed away, and we attended the funeral, and just the emotion of that story. So there are a lot of just things you take with you, but I really, really enjoyed more even the off the field stuff versus what happens on the baseball field. Those things come and go. Wins and losses aren't as important as the lessons you learn and the people you become part of their family.
Right. I know, Bryan and I both went to each other's weddings, and certainly, now that I'm back in Jacksonville over the last few years to catch up with the old guys, and outside the program, that's something Scott and I talked about last time we were on, is that family, being a smaller university where the athletic department as a whole, it wasn't just baseball, it was volleyball, it was soccer, a lot of the other sports. So I know you mentioned, you having a pretty phenomenal senior season, which ended up allowing you to move on, which is everyone's dream to go play hopefully Division I baseball and then move on to get drafted. So why don't you talk about that experience of being drafted and what you learned during that time?
Yeah. And before I touch on that, to mention kind of what you said, not just the baseball program, but all the athletics. I mean, there were a lot of soccer guys that we hung out with. There were a lot of football players we hung out with. It was kind of that athletic family, not just you're part of the baseball program. So I did, following my senior year, I got drafted by the Anaheim Angels. Was able to go into their minor league system, starting in Provo, Utah. Spending time in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, Rancho Cucamonga, California, kind of bouncing around. And it was, it was a dream. It was a dream come true. You want to be a minor leaguer, but then you get there and there's the realities kind of set in of this is not college baseball. It's very, very different. It is part of that. It's a business. It's not all the time this rah team. It is some of the I want to make it, and if I have to run you over to do it, I'm going to do it. And that was, part of the thing that I learned that, just made the experience not as great as I'd hoped. And I remember getting into Provo, every time someone got released, I would write their initials in my hat just to remember, the guys that unfortunately lost that opportunity. And after a few months, you're like, this happens like every other day. My hat's going to be full in 90 days. So I stopped doing that. But that's kind of when you start to realize that, this is a job and it's different. It's not like your time in college where everyone's really rooting for one another. It's a little bit different. So that experience was interesting, a lot of hard work, a lot of nights on the road. And then, following my time at Rancho Cucamonga, I got released and I flew from LA back to Orlando. And I remember turning my cell phone back on, and I had voicemails from 2 teams asking me to come back to California. And that was a really, really tough decision. And I went to my dad and I said, this isn't fun anymore. I don't have that passion that I had. I don't really want to do this. And, I didn't know how he would respond, but he was like, dude, I want you to be happy. You don't want to do it anymore? Find something else that you're passionate about. So, moved on from baseball and began that kind of second, third, fourth chapter in your life. What we've gone through with all those fun, great experiences, it seems like there's, multiple chapters of life that you kind of build upon.
Sure. So let's talk about the next chapter and moving into the nonprofit sector. So I know there's been a few stops along the way. So if you want to hit on those, great. If not, we can just kind of move through it. But now you're the CEO of Dogs for Better Lives. So, what brought you to the nonprofit sector, and what are you guys doing now out in Oregon?
Yeah, great question. I've taken an interesting career journey, kind of maybe similar to your experience. After you get done, your whole life is baseball. And then you get done, you're like, well, what do I do now? And I went to work. I had a buddy that was working, another Orlando baseball player that I knew real well, and he was working for a staffing agency. So I say, well, come work for us. We got an opening, try it out. I was there for like 5 or 6 months. I'm like, this is just I'm not built for this. I need something else. And happened to have kind of a family friend that was a CEO of a nonprofit organization, and randomly out of the blue, I hadn't talked to her in years. And she called me up and she said, hey, I kind of looked up your resume and see that you just started a new job a few months ago, but I have this opportunity that I think you'd be great at. Will you come just have lunch with me and talk it over? I said, sure, yeah, I'll come have lunch with you. Well, there's her and then another gentleman was there, and I introduced him, but didn't kind of really think about it. But at the time, I thought I was interviewing them to see if I wanted to take this opportunity, when in actuality, they were interviewing me to see if they even wanted to offer me the job. And it turned out to be kind of the director of marketing and special events job, where I was helping to run fundraising golf tournaments across the state of Florida. So a really cool kind of entry-level position to jump into that nonprofit world, where I'm a young 20-something-year-old playing golf all the time, being out in the sun, doing some marketing work. This was great. So really enjoyed that position, but, worked directly with the CEO. And really, at that point, I was like, that's kind of what I knew. I want to be the CEO of a nonprofit organization. This is, I know I can do this, and this is how I want to take my career path. And, I guess, people listening or in your experience, Pat, once you figure that out and you go, wow, now I know what I want to do, you just kind of go. Mm-hmm. And, you've done it with your marketing company, with your marketing career, all the things that you've accomplished. Once you're lucky enough to find something that you really want to aspire to, it becomes very easy to well, I wouldn't say very easy, but it becomes clear what that roadmap is. And I knew, okay, I'm in this job, but I need to get the next job. I'm constantly working for the next job. And so I took several stops along the way. I was hired as a development director with a humane society. And at that point, I went back and got my master's degree. And at the same time, was able to really revolutionize their business model and reframe how they were looking at their adoption process as, their adoption process is a loss leader. It costs you far more to care for these dogs than the adoption fee. And so you need to look at it in that way. And so we created several business lines, a public vet clinic, retail operations, boarding and grooming facilities, all these things to become this kind of one-stop shop. You trust us. We're the trusted leader in the community when it comes to animals. And once they shifted that, they went from losing, $500,000 to making profits of $1.5 million and more. And luckily, financially setting themselves up for, something like this that we're going through now. And so I was promoted to CFO there, and then took a couple of other steps to get to become CEO of Dogs for Better Lives. And really, it was an interesting time because I was with Canine Companions for Independence, another assistance dog organization. And I'll kind of get into kind of what we do here. But really loved my job, was working really closely with the CEO there, large national organization, nonprofit organization, one of the most respected organizations in the country. And again, always, being open for those opportunities, always looking for what is the next step in my career progression. This opportunity came up, and it's like, everyone I talk to is like, you're nuts. What are you doing? You're moving your family. You got young kids all the way across to go move to Southern Oregon. Why would you ever do that? And, it was a risk, but it's one of those things. I sat down with Rachel, my wife, who and said, I think this is right for our family. If you're for it, let's do it. I'm in. And she said, I'm in, let's go. And made this leap. And, it's scary moving across the country. And now that I'm with the organization, things, it's sometimes better to be lucky than good, Pat. I mean, that, just kind of some of the things that have happened when I was working for Canine Companions, and I was leading something called the Strategy and Systems Group and utilizing technology to improve all our processes. When I came here, they were a 100% paper-based organization.
Wow.
And so for 2 years, we built the infrastructure to go 100% digital, 100% cloud-based, with some, minor things on the server here and there. But just being able to do that allows us to prepare for this time where we're remote. People aren't on campus, but we're able to continue our operations. And yeah, there's some challenges we're navigating our way through, but much better prepared than we were. And just kind of a little bit about Dogs for Better Lives is we're an assistance dog organization. So we train dogs for individuals with disabilities. And we have three kind of areas that we serve. We serve people who are deaf or hard of hearing, children on the autism spectrum, and then what we call facility dogs. So our facility dogs will go into rehab centers, child advocacy centers, and an employee of that facility will interact with clients. And so we, for the most part, we rescue dogs from shelters and then train them and place them to do that. So it's a really neat organization that I'm really, really proud to be a part of.
That's awesome. Well, I think for the listeners, if you can, maybe just your website, if someone wants to look it up, see what you're doing. I know it's got your bio on the website as well. So if they want to learn more about you and the organization, where can they go?
They can go to dogsforbetterlives.org. And from there, you can get all the information you need. We have our social media channels. We'll post puppy pictures and fun stuff. So anyone looking for a puppy fix, scroll through our Instagram. It's got some neat, fun pictures and videos. So yeah, you can get all the information there, read about our team here and a little bit about me.
That's great. Well, Bryan, I really appreciate you coming on. It's fun to sort of kick off this new evolution of Dolphin Tales with former teammates, someone I know and have known for a long time. Next time you're back on this coast and in Jacksonville, we'll get you out to campus. And I was telling Scott the things that they have done, not only from the athletics, but just the university overall, is pretty impressive. So we'll get you out there next time you're in town.
Absolutely. Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Scott. You guys, I've listened to several of your episodes. They're great. Pat, yours was great too. So congrats on this nice project that can highlight, alum and student life and, reminisce on some of the stories that we had while Dolphins